evening and welcome to tonight's session of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Roslyn Miner and I'm really excited about today's session. The topic of today is mentors, sponsors, and mirrors. Who's in your corner? And I'm really honored to have Maria Shipiri, a global HR leader with more than 20 years, cutting across, sectors in pharma, telecommunications, banking, insurance, NGOs. And you can imagine that richness in experience and organizational design, transformation, and leadership effectiveness. Tonight, she will be joining us as we tackle the topic of mentors, sponsors, and mirrors. And oftentimes we have people, recommending do you have a mentor? Do you have a sponsor? What's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor? So join us tonight as we have this conversation. Maria, karibu, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Roslyn. Really appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here.
Really, really honored to have you here. As is the norm, I'll start off with sharing a couple of statistics or facts that support the topic of the day. 76% of professionals say mentors are important, yet only about 37% actually have one. Employees with mentors are 5 times more likely to be promoted than those without. However, mentorship alone often improves confidence and performance, not necessarily visibility. So, what does that translate? Now, let's look at sponsorship. Professionals with sponsors are 23% more likely to move into senior roles. Yet women are over-mentored but under-sponsored, a gap widely cited in leadership studies. Senior leaders often attribute key career moves to someone advocating for them behind closed doors. And I think we can all relate to that. When you have someone advocating for you in a room that, your presence is physically not there. Now let's look at the mirror effect. Only 10 to 15% of people are truly self aware. Leaders who actively seek feedback are rated as more effective by their teams, yet many professionals say they receive infrequent or overly softened feedback. I don't know how many of us are guilty of that. Now, let us look at the tension between visibility and performance. High performance does not automatically lead to advancement. Visibility and advocacy play a critical role, and many professionals report that career defining opportunities came through networks and not applications. I think a lot of us can actually see how, having the right networks, having the right people advocating for you can actually help you move from one level to the next. And that brings us to, gives us a good foundation of what our topic is tonight. Mentors, sponsors, and mirrors. Who's in your corner? Maria, what are your initial thoughts, going by the statistics that we have just had a quick review of?
First of all, I believe that those statistics are global, right? So,
Yes.
so I think the numbers would be lower in Africa. So to know that 37% of people do not have mentors are many. Maybe I don't know, Africa is probably 20%. Then you can even imagine those that have sponsors, even lower.
Yeah.
Even when sponsors know that they would help somebody else and they would help the country, they would help Africa, we're still not sponsoring enough. So I think, yeah, feedback, when we don't obtain feedback or we prefer soft feedback, then indeed our growth is probably hindered, not as good as it should be. Yeah.
You mentioned something that I think a lot of us are guilty of, soft feedback. Where, when you have, if someone has had the pleasure to have intercultural, interactions, there are countries that are, deemed to have their personas to be quite strong. compared to, for example, Kenya. Kenya, we are deemed to be, soft and meek. But firstly, if you compare with our brothers and sisters in Nigeria, they are very direct. So, do you think that is also a contributing factor to how we see feedback?
I think it is because it depends on the context. So we know why Nigerians are who they are. I think is it 100 million people or
Yeah.
even more. In Lagos alone is quite congested, and you have to speak loudly to get heard. And if I compare that to somebody who's in Mauritius, who, you usually have your tea or your juice on the beach every day at 6 p.m. When you leave work at 5, by 6, 6:30, you've had your meal and you're having juice on the beach, and all you enjoy is the calmness. So those are two very different contexts. So how I would pass feedback in Mauritius would be very different from how I would pass feedback in Nigeria. So I think we have to appreciate context
Yeah.
and not copy and paste. And maybe that's where we probably go wrong, where we have to use a Western model to provide feedback and soften it in a Nigeria, it won't work. Something in between may work in Kenya. So I think we should always consider context when we design what works for us.
I couldn't agree more. Now, typically, when you look at our career journeys, there are always people who shape us in quiet and significant ways. What has that looked like for you?
Shape in quiet and significant ways. Indeed, I think I would say probably my HR bosses. I can give an example of when I was working in Coca-Cola, and I had a boss. I would say three bosses. So we had a lady called Carol Wainaina, who was the head of, I think, Africa at the time, and then we had a lady called Susan Giduku, who was head of the COE, and then we had my immediate boss, Josephine Mbithi. So Justin would always tell me, I know I've given you these goals, but find something somewhere that you can do to exceed those goals. So she did not tell me how and what it was. She just gave me the opportunity. And then Susan would always say, I'm reading this book. Would you like to read it too? So I knew that there were certain books that if I read, then I would grow. Carol would speak to us and tell us what's going on in Atlanta, in Turkey, and other places, and it was up to you to take notes and see what you could apply in your area. So I think I had people who are some were intentional and some were completely unconscious. And their role of should we say, being a mentee was for me to pick what worked for me, and it was up to me to own it and to pursue it.
I hear an opportunity of having people that are rooting for you. It may not be directly, but they are providing avenues for you to grow your mindset, grow, the path that you want to take. Which takes me to the next question. Many of us assume that working hard will naturally lead to growth. At what point does that belief start to shift?
I think the belief starts to shift when your role shifts. Like for example, you've gone through phases of promotion, and different skills are needed at different levels. So that's one that's it starts to shift because what you need for you to get to the next level would be different. I think the other one that determines the shift is the business. The business is perhaps taking a different direction, and what you did yesterday is not relevant for today and even tomorrow. And I think the other one is your personal shifts. So if you're a mother now, it's time to have babies. Then you have to do a good job at having the babies, and at the same time, a good job in the office. Or another is you don't have babies, but you've moved. If I use the example of Kenya, you've been living comfortably in closer to town, Kilimani, Kilelesha, and now you bought land in Limuru, I don't know, in Kitengela, and it takes you an hour and a half commute. Things have shifted, and you have to take that into account. So personal circumstances, business reason, and where your career is at will definitely require one to shift differently.
So the opportunity for someone to put into mind the various changing dynamics calls for agility doesn't matter if it's career, business, or personal. So people need to appreciate that, it's not always going to be linear. Actually, life is not linear, but you have to adapt. Adaptability is key. There's often a difference between having people around us and having people truly in our corner. How have you come to understand the difference?
Mm. Having people around and people in your corner.
Yeah.
I think for you to have someone in your corner, you must be somebody that adds value to that person that is going to be in your corner.
Yeah.
So you don't expect people to be in your corner because you're a tall, dark, handsome man, or because you are in an Ivy League college, or because you are, your father or your mother or your brother is somebody. I think you really must be someone that adds value. There are two schools of thought on having people in your corner, because that's the person that really talks about you behind closed doors in the boardroom and other places. I think the first school of thought is the value that you add. And the value that you add could be direct or indirect. Sometimes you may add very direct value in terms of business value. You over deliver, you hit your business goals. That's a really important value. Other people have seen, and I remember when I worked in Morocco, we had a gentleman in the office who each and every person went to when they were in a difficult place. I think it was called Usman, and everybody went to see Usman, when they are struggling with a performance review or they just want someone to talk to. They were always seeing Usman, and that was not his job. He had his day job. And anytime they would speak about him in talent reviews or in the boardroom, his name would always be on the list. So it's not always necessarily your personal goals. I think it's just adding overall value to the entire work ecosystem. Having people around you is, you're going to have people around you, they may be your friends, they may not be your friends, they're just hanging around you the way you hang around people. But the one that is really in your corner is the one you should focus on and ensure that you add value.
I love what you said. Adding value indirectly, directly or indirectly. And having people around you can be as simple as noise. But what value are you getting out of the interactions that you're having? Now, let us look at the mirrors when it comes to the topic of the day. Feedback can feel different depending on where we are in our journey. What has helped you stay open to it, even when it's uncomfortable?
Okay, feedback. I think I stay open to feedback because it's enabled me grow, and both professionally and personally. I'm a married lady, and sometimes my husband gives me very harsh feedback. And when I get a similar feedback at my place of work, then I know that there's definitely a thread of consistency in what I'm being told. It's up to me to take the next step or not. So it helps me grow professionally and personally. I think the other is for me that is very personal is the impact that I have. Because if I wake up every morning to have a positive impact on people's lives, and then I can only do it if I hear from them. And that's a personal mission of, I want people to grow. I want to be able to meet people I have not seen for many years and catch up from where we left from. So from that personal mission of impact enables me to receive feedback because it's only them who tell me how whether I'm adding value to them or not. Because I guess the value is perceived by I think by the receiver and not by me the giver. So I think only feedback can help to ascertain the impact I'm creating.
I fully agree. The value of feedback and especially constructive feedback. It doesn't matter if it's glowing or you are being asked to
Mm,
introspect.
mm,
Oftentimes people want that to be pacified. What advice would you give an individual for us to change that mindset that feedback is not always going to be pacified for you? And the person who's giving it to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have anything, negative towards you. They're just providing you with that feedback. How can we grow our mindset to, be open to take the feedback, but also be open to provide feedback? Because I think we also struggle with that as a HR profession when it comes to performance management. If you're doing it 360, there are people that are not willing to be you know candid with you. How can we promote a culture of
Mm,
accepting feedback?
mm. I think one is to always, always, always be the owner of asking for feedback. Always. Do not wait for HR processes. Do not wait for, I don't know, it's quarterly review now, you're going to ask for feedback. So it is to always be the initiator of obtaining feedback. Secondly, is to not choose who you're going to get your feedback from. So when you enter in the morning, if you're, let's say you've arrived at your place of work, you've gotten out of your public means, your Uber or whatever,
Yeah,
and you arrive at the gate, speak to the watchman, ask him how his day was, then ask him, have I closed the door behind me? Have I closed the door? He'll say, normally you don't close it. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll be closing the door every time. That's already feedback.
yeah.
The feedback starts from your entire value chain as you get into the office. Get into the office from the guard, the lady at the reception or gentleman at the reception, your colleague, your boss, the people you're serving, if you're serving external customers. And then, when you leave the building and you go home and you get into an Uber and you have a chat with the person and then you eventually get home. So feedback is throughout. I think that's why it's called 360, don't know if it's 720, whatever it is. So be very, very open to obtaining feedback from any person that you touch in your life. It's not about performance only. It's about who am I? Am I aware of who I am? So think about your value chain and start to find areas where you can obtain that feedback.
I love the challenge that you have thrown back to us. Be Take ownership of the feedback supply chain, if I may call it so. Don't wait it to be initiated by someone else. Go for it, ask for it, be open to it.
Mm,
We all have blind spots. What
mm,
has helped you become more aware of yours over time?
mm. I think one is I've gotten to know who I am. So, for example, one thing about me is that I get bored super, super easily. If something is not changing, I can't stay in that pace. I think either it's a mental or I don't know neurological disorder, if I can say so. I get bored so easily. It took me very, very long to understand that about me. But I remember my dad and my mom would always say, Maria, you'll start this and then you won't finish it. You'll go to the next thing. So it took me so long to understand I'm always curious and looking for the next thing. So sometimes I don't finish certain things. I still move on. So because I'm aware of that, and remember it began by my parents sharing that with me. Of course, I went and did so many assessments as we all do. Then together with the feedback that I get from different people, including my personal friends, I built my self-awareness. And after I built that, then I knew there are certain places I will succeed and thrive, and there are certain places I will fail flat. So I began making the choices of, can I work in this place, in this job? Yes or no? If I take on this job and I look at what they expect me to deliver, I know in 2 years I'll be done. So when you look at my career, I have not worked in one place for more than 5 years. And I like it.
Yeah.
And I'm fine. I remember recruiters would say, well, Maria, we've approached you, but we're not sure about you because you don't stay in places. I said, hey, I actually don't stay in places. Tell me what the work is. I'll go in, I'll get the work done. And once I'm done, I'm done. I'll move on to the next one. I've done this until I was, I think, about 52 years old. So, done it. It's who I am. I've enjoyed it. I've not measured myself against anybody else. I've done it and I'm still doing what it is that I like to do. So, not having apologies, but choosing what suits me and makes me happy.
I like the fact that, you've been advised of, say, an area of improvement or a weakness. You've taken ownership of it and you've actually identified, how can I take this situation to the best of my advantage, because obviously if you get, like as you said, you get bored easily, hanging on to a place just to tick a box doesn't work for you. It's not growing you. So you have taken that and captured it in such a way that you are now using it as a strength that works for you and grows you as you go. Now,
Absolutely. Well
sometimes,
summarized.
thank you. Sometimes growth means evolving beyond spaces or voices that once felt aligned. How do you navigate that without losing yourself?
Mm. I think I have a very good example. When I worked in Coca-Cola, I'd worked for, I think, about 3 years in my roles, which had evolved. And I told my boss, why are these sales and marketing people always giving us hell? Telling us we are so important, you're giving us such little bonus, you don't care about our development. They were always, blaming HR for everything. I told my boss, if there is an opportunity, I want to go and work in sales and marketing and just understand what those people do because it looks like what they do is so important that there's something they're not doing for them. So I moved to Uganda and I took in fact, it was a channel manager job. It was probably two levels lower than the job I had at the regional level. So it was a country role
Yeah.
and it was in sales and I was looking after what they call small supermarkets, not even the big ones.
Wow.
And after 3 months, I was so bored because I was like, what? You mean these people wake up in the morning and what they do is they look for the routes to market? They go, they look at the coolers and they check with their product, whether the cooler has been infiltrated by other products that should not be there, and then they write a report, and by lunchtime they're done. You mean the problem is actually to just sell the soda while I've been dealing with human problems? I said, I'm going back to HR. I'm going back to HR. So sometimes I think it's important to go and experience something.
True.
And even if it's lower than the job I had before, for me at that time, career was not so important to me. It was that experience and those learnings and how I can use them in the future, which I did, yes.
I
Yeah.
love
So
the example you provided. It reminds me of a time. So I worked in the insurance industry, and at the start, I had that negative perception, insurance niwezi, because you really don't understand what the policy is doing. You don't understand your benefits. You don't understand how it works. Until I found myself at one point in my career, I was in charge of a department, the whole medical book. And that's when you really understand and appreciate the beauty of what it is people do, why they behave the way they do. And then by the time you're doing any decisions or creating any solutions, you actually have that hands on experience. I wonder what happened when you came back to Kenya after that sales role.
I came back to HR. I appreciated HR even more. And I always tell any person in HR that don't think you're taking on an easy job. Don't think you're taking on HR because you like people. No, it's a really hard job. It's harder than a sales job. You may not be paid as much as a salesperson or a CFO, but your job is really hard. So there must be a little bit of a personal calling when you take on HR work. So I always tell HR people that.
I couldn't agree more. Human dealing with people is not the easiest task.
Not at all.
Now, let's do mentors. Let's go to mentors. So, you've painted a picture of how mirrors how we need to identify who we are, what is our value. Now, when it comes to mentorship, mentorship can take many forms. What has meaningful mentorship look like for you at different stages?
I think meaningful mentorship for me is first of all having a mentor that is authentic. A mentor that's authenticity means they will tell me the truth. At the same time, they will tell me their perspective, so what they think, and then they are open enough to also tell me about their personal journey. If a mentor doesn't do those three things, I don't think they should be a mentor. They're probably a coach. So someone that will walk with you, they'll tell you, hey, I did this at this time, and this is what happened to me. If I were you, I would probably not do this. Probably. You're not telling me what to do. I'll probably not do this. So they're authentic, they're sharing their story, they're giving you advice. It's up to you to follow it or not. I think that's what I consider mentors. So we need to choose our mentors, and I think our mentors are not necessarily people that we meet. Sometimes it's just people that we read and we copy. We copy the habits. We try them. We fail. We look for another mentor. So I think it's really us to select why we want a mentor. My mentors have been, I mean, whether I meet them in person or not, my mentors have been men who have been successful in balancing both work and family. I really admire women who have done the same as well. I think the latest is my current mentor. People tell me it's reverse mentoring, but I completely disagree. My
Mhm.
14-year-old niece, she's called Ellen Chepkwony. She calls me, Auntie Maria, do you know how to use your new iPhone? I'm like, yeah, I know. Then she asked me, are you using this and this feature? I'm like, no. And this and this feature, no. Okay, Auntie Maria, I need to come home and show you how to use your phone. So she has really helped me do so much. Learn how to use my phone, learn how to use this phone. I have this here. I have for a
Mhm.
health watch.
Mhm.
She's taught me how to create a website in 5 minutes, which we did together. And I have
Wow.
a website in 5 minutes. She's written for me my AI learning, my courses, my curricula, and I told her, can you please set tests after each topic? Set a test for me. And then some of these topics I want you to teach me. So yes, I can teach myself, but I want you to teach me. So she is my mentor. She's authentic. She tells me, Auntie Maria, you're late for the class today. We have classes every Wednesday at 5 p.m. So yeah, so I'm owning it. She's invested. She's telling me the truth. She's like, Auntie Maria, I know, I'm from class, but you have to do this. My teacher did this, you have to do this. So that's authenticity, that openness, that friendly relationship where I can also challenge her and she can challenge me.
Yeah.
That's what you have a mentor.
What I love about the example you've provided is the fact that the openness and willingness to learn, not because of the age difference, because someone can say, what are you going to tell me, you youngin? But because you appreciate that the world is viewed differently by a 14-year-old compared to like myself. Whatever they're experiencing now is totally different, and how they grasp things and how they see the magic of the world. And what impresses me with the example you've provided is, you know, going to high level, but now seeing the magic that comes with that, that willingness and openness to learn, that mindset shift is really, really commendable. Now I feel like I need to look for a young
Yeah.
mentor this way.
Who else will teach you AI in such a safe space if not someone that knows, that is younger, that is using it? Those are
True.
and it's almost free.
I mean, they make the best teachers because they are doing it hands on.
They do. They do.
There are moments when guidance comes easily and others when it doesn't. How do you approach those gaps?
When guidance comes easily. So sometimes it comes easily when it's structured. And when it's completely unstructured and let me use AI as an example. We being in HR, we know that we are supposed to help organizations to become agile. We talk about agility, we talk about the right design for an organization in terms of structures, we talk about operating effectiveness. Now we are saying there's something called AI. So if you look at what we are doing, we are attending so many courses to understand what AI is. And I think that is extremely important. We don't even know where to begin and what the structure should look like. So in a case like this, I am looking for people who, one, at least have done it from a practice perspective. So for me to create structure, I try and look for what is executionable, where there's evidence that it has actually been done or is being done, then that way I can learn in a more practical way. So I have to look for people who have been there, who are doing it, who can speak a story about the impact, whether it worked or not. So I look for that structure, and that's what I'm looking for in AI now. That's how I landed my niece, and she's not my only mentor. I also have other, some software engineers who I hang out with, developing some products. So that's why it's like I look for many people around me. I think now this is where I say people around me, not at my corner, just around me to create that structure.
What I hear from what you're saying is the need to be intentional and to have a target of what it is that you want to achieve, so that you might not find everything under one roof, but you
Yes,
can actually get pieces like a jigsaw puzzle, and you have all these pieces and you can combine them, just as long as you know what your ambition is and what it is that you want to achieve.
yes, and to try it out, like you say, a jigsaw puzzle to actually create. the image and to say it's done. So not just remaining at the theory, but
Yeah.
also the practice.
And when you put doing it in practice, I think it's very important for people not to put away the aspect of fear. You know, we take failure in such a negative light instead of sometimes viewing it as a teaching moment, because yes, you failed, but you actually put your mind into something. It's just that it didn't give you the result, the positive result that you were seeking. But it's an avenue for you to say, I had done it this way, maybe I now need to tweak it. So that openness and willing to fail and take it
Mhm.
as a learning curve, unlike, failure for what we really see it as.
Yes, that is right, correct.
Yeah. So, what has helped you stay grounded in your own voice while still learning from others?
So one is my personal mission, which I've shared earlier around impact. And then I think also hanging around the right people, hanging around people that we are aligned from a mission and values perspective. Our spirituality also has kept me grounded. I must say that I've got two people that are around me that really keep me grounded, and that's my daughter and my husband. My husband challenges me. He doesn't look at me of I have to protect this lady and what she says is always right. And no, he challenges me. I taught him how to challenge me from in HR we call it the STAR model, right?
Mm.
Situation, task, the actions I took and the
And
results.
the results.
Don't just tell me this. Tell me, make it logical because that's how I understand things. So now, anytime he's telling me, he says, yesterday this is what you did. I'm like, oh, yesterday, okay, that situation. Okay. So what did I do? Then he takes me through that. And he's like, what? Those results, even those that either came or are going to come. So, so I would say that, yeah, my family has really kept me grounded. And my friends who are vision aligned. I also have friends who are not vision aligned because you don't have to always hang around certain types of people. It's also good to hang around people who are so different from you. Because one you can say, hey, I don't want to be like that person. From what I'm seeing, I don't want to be like that person.
Yeah.
Or this is what they do. Oh my God. It just becomes something so exhilarating to understand. So hang around your people, but also go to places that you don't really know, where you may not be very comfortable. You will come out with a few learnings and even helps you ground yourself even further.
I like the fact that you own the feedback. It has to be substantiated in, it's not just given arbitrarily. It's targeted, and therefore it enables you to take it, and actually the actions that you take following that interaction, they are intentional. But you also mentioned the value of going to uncomfortable spaces where you're not the brightest person in the room. That way, it gives you the opportunity to actually open your eyes and see and value what it is the world has to offer.
That is true. In fact, when I went to work in Morocco, so I leave Kenya to go to Morocco, and I get discouragements from my friends and colleagues of how can you go and work in a Muslim country as a woman and you're black. And that's the time I said I am going to go. And when I went there, I understood how Muslim women live, and I admired so much about how they live. They are taken care of. They work until 5 p.m. most of the time. They spend a lot of time on themselves, which makes them feel good. Which, some when I compare with Kenya, we probably don't do the same thing. That was something I learned. If I hadn't gone and immersed myself and had Moroccan friends, of different ages, older, married, divorced, I would never have learned that. And then I really also got to appreciate being a Kenyan woman because I can use my money to buy property. And property will be sold to me, whether I'm a woman or a man, which is very different from Morocco. So I think immersing yourself in areas that you're not sure of or you're not comfortable in, you will leave the place richer.
And I think what you've just said is at the core of what we call diversity. Diversity and inclusion has a sometimes a negative misconception of how it is interpreted, but it's actually to do with the diversity of thought, culture, you name it. It's you immersing yourself and allowing yourself to learn from the other and keeping an open mind to it.
Exactly. Because why would you want other people to be like you? It's D&I and belonging. Why do you want them to be like you? Who are you? You're not special. We are all special and we are all different and we
Yeah,
must live together.
I couldn't agree more. Now let's go now to the sponsors. We looked at the mirrors, we look at the mentors. Let's look at the sponsors. Opportunities often come from conversations we're not part of. How have you experienced that dynamic in your journey?
Yes, sponsors. Well, that's a very controversial topic and sometimes misunderstood. I think the parts I remember when I was in Coca-Cola, I had a sponsor, and the sponsor was the president, and he told me once that the reason why I've chosen you is because you know what's happening in the whole organization, whether it was from Congo, Djibouti, or South Africa. I had people there, so I want you to be at least feeding me with what's happening and seeing, because from where I'm sitting is a bit too high, then I can bridge the gap. And he also knew I was going to tell him the truth because that's who I am. Um, and initially people would look at me funny, like they would stop speaking because they know the president is my sponsor, So I had to make them know that, what, I'm actually here to help you. I'm not here to send information. I know how to filter it. I'm in HR, we know how to
Yeah,
filter stuff. So that helped me because it helped me to impact people positively. So, for example, if you wanted to roll out a policy that was going to be negative on people, then I'd go and speak with him. Of course, I'm speaking to my boss, the HR.
yeah,
I'll go and speak with him. I will share what it would mean. I would even tell him that, can I organize a conference call with people in DRC for you to understand what it will mean on the ground? So, and I guess he would also speak, should I say, positively about me at the top,
yeah.
and that's get promoted and take on good impactful roles. But at the same time, I think sponsors miss it because a lot of sponsors, one, use the sponsorship power positively and negatively, and then secondly, some people who should be sponsors are refusing to be sponsors because I think that they feel like they're doing you a favor personally. You're not doing me a favor. You're actually growing the organization. You're growing your future talent because you will leave one day. If it's a bit outside of the workplace, you're growing a future entrepreneur. You're growing our as favorites. I mean, a wonderful college student, boy or girl. So I would like to encourage more people to come up here and sponsor. We look at sponsorship in terms of paying, giving people something that is tangible like cash. I think the powerful part of sponsorship is actually being there and seeing all those people succeed. So I think each one of us needs to become a sponsor.
You what you've said is actually critical, and I think even for other people, away from being a sponsor, I think we need to be open to go to rooms where you would not normally walk into, because that's the value of what sponsors bring to the table, but also the need to have integrity and not take it with ulterior motives. So it's, as you correctly said, there are those that do not want to, you're holding on to that person, holding them, but by holding them, you're actually, on one hand, creating resentment from the individual. And on the other hand, you're not, providing any positive, you know, nothing positive is going to come back to you. For many people, sponsorship isn't always visible or clearly defined. What has helped you recognize or build that kind of support?
I think it goes back to the why I want a sponsor. Sometimes you actually don't want a sponsor because you're okay. That's how you feel. Like if my mission to go to Morocco was to go practice my French, work in a Arab country. I went as a comp and ben manager. I didn't want to do comp and ben for a long time. I was very specific in my mission, and after 2 years, I wanted out, and that's exactly what happened. So I didn't really need a sponsor in that situation because I was very clear. But so I think first you need to understand where you personally need a mentor. I mean, need a sponsor. Sorry. So you need to understand that yourself. and then maybe find a way of influencing for you to get a sponsor. At the same time, for people who are in positions of being a capable sponsor, identify who your sponsees might be, what are their needs, and align the sponsorship relationship to the organization. So that it's not just it's not so that it's not out of context completely. And when I say organization, I don't mean only the business, I also mean the individual. Because sometimes that sponsorship helps someone in their personal life, and then that way the result is that they succeed within the organization. So I think it's always important that the sponsorship is aligned with the business of the organization, and that's either individually or even performance goals, for example.
You said something very, very valuable. One, the need of self awareness. You're not going into this expecting the person to help you identify the path that you want to take. You really need to be clear on that. And then a critical skill, stakeholder management. How are you going to build these relationships? How are you going to create these bonds so that as you interact, as you work together, this person at one point or another, they always have you at back of mind. And when something comes their way, they always think, oh, Maria can do this, or Rosalind can do this. I think that is what I hear that we really need to embrace absolute self awareness and build really good, solid stakeholder management skills so that you're going to get what it is that you're aiming for, but also you're not burning bridges along the way.
Indeed. In fact, when you're sponsored by somebody, for example, the president, man, you have to be a super performer. The goals just shift even much higher.
Yeah.
The stakeholder management, managing your boss, for example. Because my boss's boss is sponsoring me, I really need to spend time and manage my boss really in upwards in a very constructive way so that the relationship is not ruined by the sponsorship that I have. So indeed, stakeholder management is one ability you must build when you're in this kind of multiple relationship in a workplace.
Thank you for that. There is sometimes hesitation around seeking visibility or advocacy. What shifts that mindset?
Seeking visibility, that is just, it's exactly as you defined it, you're looking for
Yeah.
visibility. What you will do with it, I just wonder what the mission is, because there must be a reason why you want visibility. Do you want people to see you because you're good at doing something?
Yeah.
Or do you just want it to be known and then through that maybe you create fear? So when there's a board meeting, you open the door for the board members and people are like, wow, so and so is known by the board. Hey, I can't even touch them. Advocacy, I think, is where the truth is because you're driven to doing something that I guess makes sense for either the business or for the people. So I would focus more on advocacy, picking a topic or an issue or a problem and advocating for it to get to resolution or settlement. Yeah.
Being intentional. You're not just taking anything. You've taken a target and you're working with it to the very
Yes,
end.
yes. And good intentions. Good intentions.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Support systems evolve as we grow. How have yours changed over time?
Wow, that is something that evolves, and we must be so ready to evolve with our support systems.
Yeah.
For example, friends. The friends I had when I left college are not the friends I have today. In fact, when we meet as my ex-college mates, our conversations are completely different from those or other friends that I've picked along the way. So we must recognize that our friends are going to drop and we're going to pick on others along the way, depending on the context. So if you're a young mother or a new career entrant, or if you're an entrepreneur, you need to hang around the people that will teach you what you need to know at that particular time. If you're in retirement like me, some sort of retirement or transitioning into not being employed, then I need to hang around people who are like me. Although I must say, it's a bit depressing. I'm like, hiya, you mean this is how people who are over 50 hang out? They're so depressed. They're like, oh, no one wants to employ me. No one wants to my CV, ageism is real. Hey, it is real. But sometimes I tend to find that some of them are more negative. I don't like negativity. So I'll go and probably hang around younger people because they are looking forward to life, and I'm also looking forward to life
Yeah.
despite my age. So I think, yeah, you need to know who you need to hang around with depending on what you want to achieve and how you want to feel.
You, there's a saying that normally goes, if you hang around six people with a certain behavior, you will be the seventh. So the environment in which find yourself in will have a very huge impact of who you are and what you're going to become.
That's true. They say if you lie with dogs, you'll get fleas, right? The fleas will also jump on you and
Yeah,
start to suck on you like they do on the dogs.
true. Very true. There can be a tension between staying loyal to those who have supported us and stepping into new spaces. How do you hold that balance?
Indeed, the balance is important. Staying loyal to people who've supported you, as long as they are continuing in the same mission that that you have. So I'm not gonna stay loyal to you because you supported me 10 years ago and then now you're a crook. I'm not gonna be loyal to you. I'll shift my loyalty to what works for me. So I think loyalty is good as long as it makes sense for me. And like I said earlier, if you're retired like me and you're hanging around people your age and it's so depressing, leave. Go to other places where you'll get what it is that you want. So you don't need to be loyal to your age mates, to your peers. Sometimes jump out and go to other places that you've never been.
Now, some people struggle with boundaries, some people struggle with expressing themselves, or standing up and speaking for themselves. What message would you give them? Because there's some people who, if they have been supported by a certain person, to them it's like their life mission is to make that individual proud of them. Yet you lose yourself, as you try to pacify the individual who's living their life. What would you advise an individual that is struggling? You know what it is that you want, but your support system is going to shift. They need to embrace that change. What can you say, or what advice would you give?
Okay. Let me just charge my phone. Just let me just plug it in.
Sure.
Cool. Sorry. I think the advice I would give with someone that's struggling in speaking up for themselves is find a way for your message to get out there. Your message doesn't have to get out there through the usual means. There are many ways. There are some people who go to court to get heard. That's a way. There are some people who find somebody who can speak on their behalf, advocate. Then find the person. There are some people who use their parents to speak out for them. Then use it. There's some people who write a book and get the book out there. There's some people who drop a message on Facebook. So I think find what works for you. If you're an IT person, then put it there. If you know how to make a TikTok message and put it out there, then do that. I think find what works for you, and sometimes even just writing, creating a 1 minute TikTok message about what you're going through is enough. Sometimes you want to go the long mile, do it, go the long mile, and be prepared for the consequences, both positive and negative, and accept them. Don't go out there and then expect everybody to say, oh my God, we love you. 90 will love you, 10 will not. So be prepared for the hate messages that will come through. I remember when I took my favorite employer to court. I remember, and over an ethical issue of, you're paying me salary and you're not giving me work. For me, I was like, I mean, how does my bank account keep growing and I'm not growing my knowledge? For me, that was like completely unethical. And I got so many calls from people of, you cannot do that. That is wrong. You're just in your 30s. You'll never ever get a job. Do not. And I said, no, this is just wrong. Let me just go to somebody else who can hear me out. Eventually, that case, people call me and say, Maria, thank you, because it's been used as jurisprudence. I got heard in a way that I never even imagined, Rosalind, that how many years later, 20 years later, my case is still being used. If you look at Maria Kagai versus Coca-Cola to date, and for me, that makes me happy. I mean, not as I lost maybe so much or I had so much to manage that was very negative. I'm still happy that people actually realize that you don't want to get money for free. You don't want to be a slave. You want to work for what you get. And when you go home, you're happy for what you have worked for. So it's taken so many years for people to appreciate that. But I had to be ready for the negativity, for the late nights crying, for rejection. And using my support system to see myself through to where I am today.
At this rate, I think we need to have another talk of how that story came about and how you grew to, all these wonderful big positions, and you are someone that, people can benchmark on. So that is truly, truly inspirational.
It was. I always remember the guy that hired me when
Mhm.
I had coke in court, and that was Ivan Skidero in Mumia's Sugar. He's like, "Hi, Maria. You mean this is your case? I want to hire you tomorrow." And he took me on, and we worked together very well. So I was like, there are few brave men, there are few brave people, and those are the people that actually change the world.
That is inspirational. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as we come to the tail end of this wonderful discussion, sometimes the support we need isn't always the support we ask for. What has the learning journey been like for you?
Oh, sometimes what you ask for, you're told, no, you don't need that. In fact, your problem is this other. So I think one is to ask for support from the same question, ask it to more people, and then you'll see what their responses are. Sometimes you may, for example, think very lowly of yourself, or I don't have the right skills, I'm in this place. But when you ask for support from three different people and they tell you the same thing, you're probably more qualified than you actually think. So ask for support from different people. If you're not able to ask for support by having a conversation, just research, read. There's just too much information out there. And then I think it's always nice to have a mentor, someone you can speak to that maybe has been there in the area of support you're looking for.
That ties in really well with what you said earlier. Don't choose who you want to get feedback from. So it's the same thing. Diversify your support pool so that that diversity of thought, that diversity of opinion is going to help you, at one point there will be things that will actually tie in together. It's like they had a script that they were operating from. So you will actually see bits and pieces that actually build a bigger picture.
Mhm. Indeed. Mm.
The way we show up can shape the kind of support we receive. What have you become more intentional about over time?
Mm. So in terms of how I show up, so when I show up, people see this very brave, very outgoing type of lady, uh, and well, much as I agree that I'm brave, I think that I am, but I'm not the outgoing type. I don't like publicity. I don't even like birthday parties. My birthday was the other day, and I spoke to I've been speaking to my husband like 3, 4 months before. Do not organize a party for me because I don't want to see people. I just want to be quiet. I'd even planned because it was Sunday. I'd even planned not to be in Nairobi, so that in case he organizes it, at the price I am not there. So, so, so I do tell people that I'm not what you think you are. Being out there, posting so much on LinkedIn. It's just not me, and I don't want to change who I am because I find so much peace in who I am, and my purpose in life is still fulfilled based on how I define myself. So I don't want to. If a promoter came to me and told me do this, do that, do this, it's unlikely I will do it because I'm so happy with where I am right now. So and I want to continue. So I do anything and block what prevents me from being my authentic self.
Authenticity to the core. You can never go wrong with that. Yeah. The final question is, Second last, as we seek guidance from others, there's also a role we play for those coming up behind us. How do you think about that responsibility?
It's a must. It's a must to do because our planet will only be better if we all help each other, and especially for those who are coming up, because sometimes they don't know. They may not tell you they don't know, and that's why it's always important to share, to play your role as a sponsor, to guide with good intention. Otherwise, you'll not be on this planet. I mean, something so simple as many of us do not know how people are fighting for us in terms of seeds. Being able to throw a seed and something grows. That is so important for all of us, because if we don't fight for availability and affordability of our food,
Yeah,
then there's no reason why we'll be on this planet. So we have to help the people who are behind us, who are doing the right thing, and build a planet for them to be able to live in and enjoy the way we have enjoyed so far. It's only fair.
true. I mean, as you grow, you also need to create room and boost the ones behind us. It's the least we can do.
Yeah, because you're going to die, it's guaranteed. So please,
True.
do something for those who
True.
are left behind you. They will bury you or throw you away somewhere, but somehow they'll deal with you when you're dead. So
Yeah.
do something for them.
Help them actually have the response of who was Maria, who was Rosalind to me. That's the least you can do.
Yeah.
Final question. If someone listening today is trying to figure out who's in their corner, where would you encourage them to start?
I think first by understanding who's around them. I think first understand who's around you, and then that way you'll start to sift out the noisy ones from those who help you, or who are ready to help you. They may not even be helping you because you haven't asked for help. So you must ask for help. And so once you start doing that, getting to know who's around you, sifting based on what it is that you want to achieve at that particular point in your life, and then start to see those that will now really be in your corner. So start from your current environment, and you have to be very good at sifting. And sifting may require many skills, lots of EQ, awareness, lots of consultation, lots of feedback. If somebody's around me and I ask them for feedback and they always tell me, I don't know, Sijui, or you're the greatest person, great, great, great. Right. They keep getting great, great, great. I think that person, you should dump them. Just get them out of the room and bring in someone that will tell you, if I were you, I would consider this and that. So,
You said something that has reminded me of a conversation that was happening recently. An individual expressed that they actually take the time to review the contacts in their phone.
mhm.
You're not just filling your phone with numbers, you are filling your phone with value.
Mm,
So it can be something as simple as all those numbers that you have. Okay, what's the value? What's the interaction like? What is
yeah,
it that you're bringing to the table? What are they bringing to the table? I'm not saying that it should be transactional, life should be transactional, but value, direct and indirect, needs to be viewed in every interaction that you have in life.
indeed, indeed. And there are those people that are happy to have a million, IG followers and I know FB friends,
Yeah,
and they're happy to be that way. So let's also allow them to be that way, because people see value quite differently.
differently.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Maria, thank you so much for, you know, taking us through this topic. Mentors, sponsors, and mirrors, sharing your personal experiences. As a parting shot, what are your final thoughts or advice that you would give us this evening?
I think find yourself in an environment where you have people that add value to your life, whether it is your relatives, your neighbors, your workmates, I don't know, your church or religious mates. Find yourself in a situation where those people add value to your life. If they don't, sift them, get them out.
Unapologetically.
Indeed, completely.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight on this session of Unplugged with Ross. For those that joined us online, thank you so much for your patronage. It has been a very insightful, discussion, and there's more to come. Obviously, on more sessions on Unplugged with Ross. Maria, I cannot thank you enough. I appreciate you, and I hope I can host you again on another session on Unplugged with Ross. From me, it's everyone have yourself a good night, good morning, depending on where you're watching us from. And thank you for always joining the session of Unplugged with Ross. And until next time, I'll see you. Thanks and good
Thank you
night.
so much. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right, Asante.